welcome back everybody to another Lady Leaders. And I'm super excited to discuss this one because what I have found is so many of my coaching calls recently have been wrapped into this whole topic of what are we possibly tolerating in our offices? And, sometimes I think it can feel very defeating. And there's a sense of how do we change this climate when it kind of feels impossible? What do we possibly do? So, today I have with me, of course, co host Ashley, who actually I think you're going to have incredible insights into this just because you were part of the team, you've hired for a team, you know the feeling and the climate very well. And I'm really excited for us just to kind of dig in and actually get really tactical with how do you change a culture. So before I dive in, anything, Ashley, or if you're hearing this as well from people?
Oh, no, absolutely. I think that's one of the most challenging places to start for a doc, right? They come back from like these courses and conferences, no matter if it's clinical or business, and they're like, "Oh, I'm ready to put in these changes." But if the culture and the vibe of your office is off, or the team, like it's just you got to, this is kind of that back to basics thing, and it's not a sexy topic. It's not like it feels kind of fluffy sometimes, but I love this topic, and it's just that absolute foundation that docs need.
Yeah. Well, and the older I've gotten and the more I've done this, what I find is so much of success, like 80% is mindset. 80% is it is these fluffy things that people do because it can't be
Yep.
quite so tactical.
Yep.
It's almost like you want to instead just do the faster crown prep. And the thing is we have to have that team culture and support around us to be able to do all the crown preps and things like that. Like we just can't be a one-man band very easily. So you can, but it's pretty tough. So yeah, so what I have found, and I think most people can attest, is that after COVID, it's been just such a weird sense of getting back to what we would guess as normalcy. And it was, people reaching out for job interviews and then ghosting, people having ads out forever, nobody responding, and now I know where we are. And Ash, you can tell me by Denver, but the market's starting to definitely loosen up. We can feel it. And I think we've
Mhm.
had a lot of layoffs up and around here. I've heard of a lot of layoffs in a lot of places. So I think the market's starting to loosen up. But what people are still telling me is they're still noticing, a little bit of wishy-washiness of people. They still feel a little bit, handcuffed potentially by certain people in their current locations that don't feel awesome. Are you hearing the same thing?
Um, yes, not as much though. I will say it's
Yeah.
not quite as bad as it was. Like 2021.
Yeah.
So that does feel a little. There feels like there's a little more breathing room, I think.
Yeah. Which is great. I think everybody's feeling the breathing room, but I think that sense of scarcity mindset just really is prevalent with a lot of doctors still. It's hard to let go of people.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
that have been with you, but maybe aren't growing at the same speed. And so I think what has happened is doctors have felt a little bit, like I said, handcuffed almost to not wanting to consistently keep their standards high. And, we just did a webinar in regards to what does reestablishing the standards in hygiene look like? Well, some of what we said in that one is going to resonate, I think, is going to be the same thread for this, but we're just going to get a little more tactical. Um, you know, I think if you're sitting there saying, that's me, I think since post COVID, I've maybe allowed some of the standards in my office. I'm not holding people accountable, which, by the way, I just got a message today in regards to a doctor who's like, I haven't been holding them super accountable at the front office because I think with everything, I can go too far in one direction to try to make things be so great that I just lost that accountability piece. So if that's you right now and you're saying, shoot, I think that's me as well, where do we even start? And I tell doctors, like, often I think we want to start with pointing out exactly what everybody's not doing. And I joke, if you can take a moment, recognize it's happening, and whether what instead of going outwards with it, I'm going to ask everybody to take a pause and go inwards with it. And I always tell people truly start with you first and figure out clarity around what's maybe gotten substandard exactly, and starting to say to yourself, what do I want the standards to be? By the way, why do I want those to be the standards? Do they really matter anymore? Is this an antiquated system that honestly isn't getting us closer to the mission and core values of who we are as an office? So I should probably rethink, and now's such a great time if you've noticed that things have started slacking, to just say to yourself, really, what do I want the standards to be? And like I said, it's so easy to just start pointing out what's not working, but I have found in working with so many coaching clients that can actually confuse your team because they're like, what do you want then? What exactly do you want me to focus on? So going inwards and taking the time, which that might be a few days, that could be a week, that could be your Friday, which I know stinks, but it may be that we need to rethink, what do we want our front office to be? What are the main things that if they only focus on one, two, three things, what do we want done? What do we want it to look like, feel like, smell like when people come in? Get really clear per department what the standards are that need to be raised, be able to speak them clearly because you know why they're so important. And I say, like, starting there with a sense of conviction from the doctor, and not conviction in the sense of, like I said, blame or pointing out anything wrong, more just, and I say, I always take the responsibility. I'll always
Mhm.
say, gosh, you guys, I apologize. This is something that I've gotten really unclear with. And I want to let you know I take full responsibility. You guys are doing the best you possibly can. And I see that. I just recognize I've completely steered us potentially away from what to focus on. And I want to insert myself into, like, how do we get this to that spot of clarity for everybody? How do I get myself to where I'm bringing clarity to this department, just so that you guys know what to focus on? So I'll let you kind of chime in there as well.
No, I think that's the absolute base, and it just goes so far. And I know it's so difficult, to take that ownership. I mean, we had Jocko at the summit last year. He's all about extreme ownership. Everything that's going wrong in your practice is your fault, good and
Mhm.
bad. But that means that when things start to go good, that it's also, that's also your fault. But just starting with that and coming from a place of, guys, I know that this is on me. Maybe you were confused about what the standards are. Maybe, like, I haven't communicated effectively. Maybe I've given you so many things to focus on that nothing gets focused on. Coming from that place, at least get your toe in the door instead of coming from a place of defensiveness and why isn't this happening, and this is, why is this not the way it was, and what it's supposed to be. You just get so much further.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny. I mean, truly, to like put a little dot to this, a little dot the I to this, like, I was just on a front office meeting via Zoom with all of my front office people. And what's funny is one of our standards has always been we have to have the paperwork in at exactly this type of time. If they don't, this, well, so what's funny is as we were talking through it, I said, hey guys, it might be time for us to rethink, why do we need it to be just like that? And what if we instead prepare differently and create a
Mhm.
much more solid contingency plan? What if we just thought about it? And what's funny is all of a sudden each one of them were like, yeah, we just do it because it's always been done like that. You know,
Yeah.
but it's clearly not working and we keep running our head into the same wall. And instead of wanting human beings to change, why don't we just prepare differently and create a contingency plan? And
Yeah.
it's funny because, like, things do need to be, clarity needs to be reframed sometimes, and what we did then is not always what we may want to continue to do later. So I think clarity for me is the first piece, and one thing I tell doctors is going inwards, taking the time to set up that clarity. Please, please, please create from a place of abundance, not scarcity. Because I think
Mm.
sometimes when we're creating our standards, we're creating them from a place of, I don't want patients to think this, and they go to worst case scenario, and they're literally buffering up stuff, boundarying up stuff that's the 2% case
Yeah.
versus focusing on the abundance side of, like, the patients that we absolutely love, here's everything that they appreciate. How do we double down on that, create that wow
Mm.
experience for them versus focusing on the 2%, focusing on the scarcity, the catastrophizing type thing. So I always say to doctors, like, make certain that we're coming from a place of true abundance, what we really truly want to create, and ensuring that our clarity and our standards are focused around what we want, not so much on what we just don't want to ever happen. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, absolutely. And when yeah, you're starting from that place of, back to your why. The big thread too in the hygiene webinar we just did is like it all goes back to, delivering an amazing quality of care. And if that's where you're starting from, it's like, man, I just want them to have this incredible, amazing, wonderful experience. Not I'm so worried about what happens if,
Mhm.
then, you're just gonna drive yourself nuts over here. And the you're just going to have an overall better experience for your patients, your team, and everyone kind of in that ecosystem that you're creating.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and like I think about that level of conviction of what you were just saying. And that's what I mean by conviction. Like, I guess for me, conviction means passion towards that level of
Mm,
impact. It's not conviction towards, like I said, how do I blame, shame, create a
yeah.
sense of there is no like who did what wrong. It's this is the impact that we're trying to create, and we're all so emphatic about figuring out how to make that happen. um,
Hmm.
and I think that's always for me the starting point is I'm like, doctors, it starts with us, leads, OMs, practice directors. It starts with us having that level of standard and taking the responsibility of if this has if we've lost focus, I take the responsibility that it was me not refocusing us. And by the way, that happens. It happens. We all just lose
Yeah.
focus. And by the way, that's okay. But I will say, I'll take that responsibility of it's time to refocus. And I think once we have that clarity, we come from that place of conviction and abundance, I think teams can actually start to feel that level of energy and they don't feel defensive. They actually lean in versus leaning out with us,
Hmm.
is my feeling. And I do say, like, okay, so once we have the clarity, once we have that, what do we do now? And for me, it always, starts with I'm going to want to get the commitment level of the main influencers, me personally. I don't know about you, but like I'm going to want to go to Ashley and say, hey, Ash, I need your help. You are the integrator. They look up to you. I know you and I think a lot on this. I think we can both agree this is what's happened. Can I get your help with this? Can I get you to help recommit to these standards and help lead the charge with me? And is there any lack of clarity that you see? For me, it's Debbie. Everybody knows that, but
Mm.
I have Debbie, Julie, I have my main people that I
Yeah.
just every time will go to. And I'll say, like, it's going to take repetition and it's going to take consistency. And I need your help for that because I can't be the only vector of this mission. There's no way. Especially as your organizations grow and doctors, especially if you're in the chair, you have to have other vectors of this mission. So
Hmm.
so I've gone inward, I've recreated that, clarity from a sense of abundance. I've really re-examined why we're doing it and is it still important. I'm going to go to my main people that I know are the most high accountable, big influencers in the practice that I can trust and say, can I get your recommitment here and help? What do you think?
I can, yes, absolutely. It's like a spider web, right? Like then this is how we get your energy, and this positive momentum out. It starts with you, and like you said, out to your next ones, and then it can help go from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can only echo that.
And what I will say is I think you can attest, and probably Mark and you were like this, I'm guessing. Like I can come to Debbie. I am all stoke, all jazz, all excited. I'm so excited. I take full responsibility, but I'm ready to change it. And I can just like blow holes in every wall. And Debbie brings to me that sense of I'm with you. And by the way, integrators, if this is you in the practice, the verbiage she tends to use is I'm with you. I'm absolutely recommitted to these standards with you. And I'm going to need you to get more clear. And I used to want to be all like, why don't you understand me? What do you mean? Like,
Hmm.
want to slow down? like, come on, you know? And it honestly
Hmm.
took some other consultants in my life to say, like, Summer, you're like, you're on Z, she's still on B, saying, like, what's B? And I think if that's you, if you happen to be listening to this on either side of it, it's okay. You want those people who say, and like I said, she's just learned the verbiage. I am here with you. I am totally committed to these same standards. I want you to know that. And I'm going to need a little more clarity. So can we go back to this and really redefine it? I think it's great. Like she's learned the verbiage that like takes me and goes, great, you're with me. We're stacked hands. We just need clarity. Because then we can start to spider web it out to
Yeah.
the Amy's, the Delcy's, the people who need more clarity, but they are also the positive influencers. And I think that's probably, you've had that role quite a bit too, huh?
Yeah, 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 of course. It's like, great. That's fantastic. And we need to get there, but we still have to do these things first. And
Yes.
it's kind of like it's directing the locomotive.
Yep. Yeah. Because we just we'll literally jump to a whole different track thinking we're in the same, you know.
Yeah, no, and we left the carts behind.
And they're all like, we want to go with you, but yeah. So I think, that's the next piece for me is I get the commitment of the main influencers and I really invite their level of questioning, their expertise around it. I really invite their level of they don't say no, they just say, help me understand how. Or I'm with you, but what if there's a better way? Could we think about it like this? I try to vet that out with my main influencer people who are high accountables. And people will say to me, like, what if you don't have those people? Then vet it with who, if have anybody in your practice that's a main influencer. And that could be another doctor, that could be one hygienist. But ideally, I want to get their level of recommitment to this and hopefully kind of mesh out some of those questions that they may have. Because then at that point, once I know we're clear, we're ready, I usually hold some sort of, whatever you want to call it, reboot type thing for the whole team, reignite type meeting or something like that. And usually I like to call it something more energizing than like calibration meeting personally. And I think that's just because like I am the person who's like, oh, calibration meeting. Like, I don't know. Like, I am that person that words matter. So I try to choose words a little bit purposefully in regards to, like I said, reignite meeting or, reboot or something like that. Something just a
I'm
little
like
bit better.
I'm like the opposite, by the way. If someone's like, "Oh, we're gonna reignite," I'm like, just let me get my job done too. So I'm like,
Right,
I get it. And
right,
I'm just
right,
saying,
right, right.
there's a flavor for everyone, you
Silly. You could
know.
call it a meeting and people would go, great. But you know
Yeah,
what's funny is with
I
that
got you.
too. Yeah, like you can call it whatever. I tell people, know thy team, know thy
Yeah,
team. Like, like if you have those people who are like, no nonsense, call it whatever you want. I
yeah.
just don't like for me, I am that person who's like, another meeting. Yes. So I
That's
like to
funny.
make things a little jazzier for sure. And words always matter for me. So, but I also like to purposely get their minds towards what's the objective of the meeting.
I
Like,
get that.
I want their minds to be thinking, not this is just another meeting. It's
Hmm.
this is what the meeting's going to be about. And
Hmm.
here's even usually bullet points or agenda topics that we're going to be talking about, just so you know, coming into it. I like to have them understand what's going to be happening, not days before, but even 24 hours before, so that they can start thinking through, okay, my brain's coming into this reignite meeting, understanding like we're rebooting, we're reigniting, we're whatever you want to call it, but this is what we're going to be trying to get ready to do. And my leaders have already, believe it or not, we've even set for us what's their part to present because I don't want it to always just be me presenting in those. I want those influencers having a sense of being able to present in front of the team as well. So that meeting for us can be, it can be a 2-hour meeting. And when people ask when do we do it, we're not huge fans of always trying to have it say, during patient time or trying to somehow, lunch meetings can be a little tough because people run over, patients come early, people get pulled out of them. So we do try to have them either towards the end of the day or very beginning, something like that, where we're going to be more uninterrupted. Um, And then in those meetings, like I said, the agenda was made ahead of time. It was sent to those main leaders ahead of time so they know exactly what to come prepared with, um, what to present, what to have ready. So there's no question about that with the flow. And then we really do, and we just did this actually in the last couple of months where we review our mission, we review our core values, we review why we exist. Like what problems do we solve better than anybody for our patients? Um, what makes us unique? What makes us, kind of a magical place? And I do that for two reasons. I like it when the team gets to hear, especially newer people, this is the magic we bring that's different than anybody else. And I want them hearing that. I want them to hear
Mm,
you're sitting in a place that's very different than other places. And sometimes when we fail to discuss what makes us magical, I think people aren't aware that other places don't function like that. And, I know
mm,
for offices, they're thinking like, well, I don't know if I have all the magical things, or maybe I'm not there yet. And I'm like, I have never found a team that doesn't have magic in it. And, I'm
mm,
even talking about, like, I know for us in the beginning, I would just talk about like Dulcie. And I truly meant like Dulcie, gosh, I've seen you growing year after year. And like, what's been cool, Dulcie, is to watch you literally become more than anybody in your family. Like you're part of the family tree. It's so cool to watch, Dulcie. And like to get to see you do that here has been incredible. And now you're buying your first house. Like, Dulcie, we're so excited for you. That's so cool to get to be a part of this. Kylie, like it's been so awesome to watch the magic of you bringing into hygiene, laser therapy, and this is what you've done. Maybe that's the magic that you're sharing in that
mm,
meeting. And I know it feels woo woo, but I say, like, why would people not want to leave the culture if they don't even understand what's special about that culture?
mm,
Why would they not want to change jobs for $1 an hour if they're not even recognizing and feeling that level of like, oh, wow, that is true. Like Dulcie did have that, or that is pretty neat. And whether they're sitting there not engaged or not, I just feel like being able to kind of share that magic in this reboot meeting is a helpful way to start the whole thing off. Because to be able to
mm,
consistently continue that level of magic, guys, we've got to all recommit to who we are, why we exist, and the magic we bring. And this is what it looks like. And I take full responsibility. And I am saying this exactly in front of all these people. I take full responsibility that I have let that focus slide sometimes. And I'm here to say, like, I know this team and I know the magic we're capable of. And I'm excited to take these standards and bring them back up to where we have that same impact that we always have. And like, I'm
yeah.
excited to recommit with you. And so that's kind of my next step when it comes to bringing it to that meeting.
So I love that. And then we do have kind of a good question here. So you're as the doctor, as the owner, we talked about, it starts with you and taking ownership of it. We do have, some office managers on this call. You know, how would you want your doctor, your office manager to approach you if they're like, man, we need to fix this culture. We need, but man, I kind of feel like if it starts with doctor, they're kind of part of the problem. How would you want to be approached in that situation?
Sure, 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 sure. And I've had that question a ton too, which is I can speak for probably what I would think most doctors would want,
Mm,
which is I always think to myself, their mind is in a million places. And a lot of times, clinical care is really the number one place. A lot of the extraneous stuff is not on their mind. So if if it was me, and I can only speak for me, but I'm guessing, usually having an OM, find time where I am not in the middle of a million things. So setting
mm,
aside a time and saying, hey, doctor, I am really looking for time to be able to sit down and walk through some things that I'm seeing. And I'd love to get a dedicated hour with you or a dedicated 30 minutes. When can we find time for that? If you're finding that they're not, they just keep pushing it aside, put it at a time in open dental or whatever, Dex, Dentrix, whatever, where they can see it, whether it be at the end of the day or lunch. Hey, this is where I went ahead and put it just because I'm so excited to talk to you about a few things. I've got some really good ideas. Make certain, one thing I will tell you is don't say, I really need to talk to you.
yeah.
Doctor goes to, oh, and then they're going to never want to do it. So instead, saying, I'm so excited to talk to you about some things and trends I'm seeing. that I think we could really improve. And I'm really excited to talk to you about it. Set that time in the calendar if they don't, and then go in with an agenda. That's another thing that I know for me is going in with bullet points of what you want to touch on and being able to say, like, we may need to pin these and really set a different time to dig into them. But these are the specific things that I'm noticing, I'm certain you're unaware of. And I always say, if you can give doctors, I love everybody on here and I am one and I get it, but like, they're just as like, they can get just as defensive as anybody else.
Yep, I was
And
so good with
so I
it.
always say, like, just like I know I like to preserve the dignity of whoever I'm talking to, I'll beg of you to preserve theirs by saying something along the lines of, Doctor, your mind is in a million places. And that's what I'm here for, is to see the blind spots that I am certain you don't because you care so much about the patients in those moments. That would soothe me. One, you're excited to present opportunities. You found the time, you put it in there, you came with bullet points, and you soothe that sense of like, you are in a million places and that's my responsibility to help see the blind spots. And that's what I'd love to discuss with you because I know how much you care. I know for me, I'd be like, great, perfect. What about you, Ash?
No, that's exactly it. And that's, I mean, as you mentioned, I've worked with Dr. Mark Costas for 13 years now. And you develop a rapport, and that's it's just solid communication, kind of layering that in, like, hey, I'm really excited about this. I've seen some things. I know you've been so focused over here and you're so driven here. Here's what here where I think we could, use some support or whatever it is. But yeah, it's the getting the defensive down of whoever you're talking to. This is just like, um, there's like the book, it's like Never Split the Difference, and he talks about hostage negotiation. It's a
Yeah.
little bit like that. You're negotiating
Yeah.
the life of the practice here. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
the line to get the kind of defenses down and come in not attacking of like, here's everything you're doing wrong.
Yeah.
You want to set this conversation up in the best way that you can. And I love everything you said.
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully that was helpful. Um, but I think, so it starts with clarity, like me setting myself aside, getting really big clarity, re-examining what I want. Do I still want it? Does it still make sense? Throwing out the old so people recognize it's completely acceptable to throw out old practices that aren't getting us to where we want. Getting my influencers on board and ensuring I have their commitment and buy in, true commitment and buy in. Getting an agenda ready for a reboot meeting and making sure people know, the leaders know what to come prepared for. Um, Having those bullet points set out for the team 24 hours ahead of time to get their minds starting to think through, okay, this is what the meeting is going to be about. um, and then like I said, that meeting, setting the time to ensure that we aren't going to be distracted, patients aren't going to be coming in and out, front office isn't going to have to be constantly moving. Like for me it's a big deal. And if it's going to cost a lot of money to have these people there, I want to be really intentional and focused about it. So for us, like I said, we rediscuss mission, core values, why we exist, why we're special, what's the magic of our office, celebrating things that create that magic. And then I bring back in, that's why these standards matter, and I know that you guys agree with me. And I will always say that. I know this team, I know you guys agree with me on it. So I'm excited to dig back in and I take the full accountability that I may have allowed us to lose focus. And I'm excited to jump back in and make that happen. Um, so then, like, what do we do now? So we've had this meeting, what do we do now? And I'm like, well, I do think after that meeting, I do end up setting up pretty consistently. Like I said, I just did one, front office, back office, hygiene, whatever, doctor, almost like reboot little mini meetings. And those might only be an hour, but we then kind of go in and in those departmental meetings, we'll be able to say, hey, hearing what those standards are specifically, let's make sure from a front office standpoint, are we all on the same page? Because as you grow and move from one person who's holding that standard to even three or four, things get lost quickly when it comes to those standards. And it's not because anybody's trying, it's just because we have two, three, four different personalities. Um, and so going department by department and ensuring that people then can talk in a small group with only two, three, four, whatever, five, whatever people. And they can say, okay, let me make sure I heard you right in the meeting, or let me make sure that this is what you mean for hygiene when we need to recommit to those standards. Um, I do have my leads, per department. They're the ones who create, for the most part, those agendas. They know the KPIs, they know the standards
Mm,
that they think are the most important. People have said, well, I don't have leads. And I say, no problem. If that's just, like I said, you and a hygienist, you and whatever,
mhm,
I think that's completely fine. Or, like I said, just make sure that they're high accountables and they're getting the job done how you want. Um, I don't feel as if, people who can't get the job to that standard at the current time, we don't necessarily want them to try to set the standards because they just may not be able to even know what it is and how to hit it right now. Um, and so in those little department by department little reboot meetings, they're revisiting what is the top one, two, three things that are the most important. If I'm a scheduling coordinator, what is the most important one, two, three things to get done in a day? And I
mm,
say that, believe it or not, for a lot of people, they truly don't know in the course of a phone call, somebody walking in, a treatment plan needing to be done, and insurance needing to be verified. They don't know what to do first. So
mm,
they might take the path of least resistance because the insurance verification is going to take 40 minutes and they know they're going to get interrupted. So it might be we
mm,
have to help with them saying, here's when to do these verifications. Here's a faster way to do it. Here's a
mm,
company to help or an instant verification. Like we might have to help them understand how to prioritize those top one, two, three things. Um, but after that big kind of reignite, reboot meeting, whatever you want to call it, meeting, whatever you want to call it, I move it into little department meetings that are mostly run by the leads. But if need be, I stepped in the very beginning with all of this too. And I reset the standards, but I made sure that they could speak into them. They could tell me their blind spots. They could honestly say
mm.
what's keeping them from getting there, and we could really work through what's keeping them from hitting the top one, two, three things, and working through that to ensure that they understand how to focus on the most important things. So what's your thoughts, Ashley?
Nope, I think you're hitting it on the head. I love that you also, created the leads when you can, and then you step back and let them, because no, that's also one of the most frustrating things as team members is when, like if Dr. Costas comes in and, wants to run the system for behind DSN, and he's like, why is it happening this way? Well, like not in the trenches, right? You're not the one in that zone. And by empowering your team member to own their zone and to help create and understand their systems and giving them a platform to communicate their challenges, I mean, it just creates a better culture.
Yeah.
Like we talk about it, just it creates ownership over the systems. It creates, yeah.
Well, and I think
Sorry.
too, whether it be doctors, OMs, if you're going to be a part of these, like they're not going to feel safe to tell you their obstacles if I've already assumed I know the obstacles and they're
Right.
just ding dongs for not figuring it out. I
Yes.
have to come in with curiosity of like, there may be something, like I always assume something's missing. I always assume there's something I don't know, I don't
Hmm.
understand, instead of I assume they're just not doing their jobs. So I think we have to be able to take these department meetings, to go through those standards and ensure that we're hearing them when they say very quietly sometimes and very scared, like, this is how it feels to be in this position. And I want
Hmm.
to do a good job, but I'm genuinely just, oh, and like they'll use the word overwhelmed a lot. And I tell doctors, don't let that scare you. They
Right.
don't know any other word, I say. They don't know to say, actually, it's lack of prioritization. They don't know that, or it's lack of time efficiency, not because I don't want to be time efficient. I don't know how.
Hmm.
Or I don't make good lists, so I don't know where to start. They're not going to be able to voice that. So if they say, if you get curious and they just say, I don't know, I just get overwhelmed. I always just slow it down and say, okay, great. So what I'm hearing is maybe you don't necessarily know like what to do when this is all happening at one time. Is that what I'm hearing? And it's funny when you help them gain clarity of what the obstacles are, they'll go, yes, that's it. I can attack that when people say I'm overwhelmed and I try to just quickly respond to them with that feeling, I'll start like throwing solutions that aren't even to the right problems. So I just say, like, if I can take a moment to just slow down, I trade my leads, like, just get really curious. And I say people might get defensive if they think the words good and bad are associated. There is no good or bad. Don't even use those words. And that's where I'm like, there's no blame, there's no nothing with that. All there is we're recommitting to this standard of care. This is how it helps the patient. This is how it helps your team member. And by the way, this is actually how it helps you, I say. Because often when I bring it back to the patients, their team members, and you doing your job better, more effectively, and efficiently, they'll actually have a better buy-in. If it's hit these standards for any kind of financial reason or hit these standards or else it's bad or you're not doing a great job. You know what I mean? I try not to use that type of language. Like I said, words do matter for me. It's like when we do this, it's a better result for the patients. The team has a better result. Your department has a better result, and it's going to be way easier for you. That is usually kind of how I lay things out in those meetings. And I sometimes have to help the leads with that.
I want to touch on something you just said too about helping them to communicate what actually the issue is, because I think again though you just gave you gave some brilliant examples of them describing what the actual issue is. Well, like as a leadership, as an owner, as a manager, sometimes like I haven't realized how to communicate what that is. So it goes back to, kind of putting some time and effort into understanding, what's actually going on if I'm overwhelmed as the manager. Like am I actually just overwhelmed? Like you have to learn that in yourself first before you
Totally.
can start to understand it in your team. And we had, I go back to the lady who did the somatic workshop with us, right? Like that, you have to start to recognize the feelings in yourself first before you can start to understand what someone else is going through. Or, not be dragged into it or, that type of thing. So anyway,
Yeah.
that just kind of touched on
Yeah.
that for me.
Yeah. For sure.
We do have a question here too. Dr. Claraday says, can we also address the fact that some of these systems would not pass the muster in the tech world? They are not user friendly, i.e., what people are used to using in the real world. Dr. Jason, this is the real world too.
Well, and I'm not certain quite if he's saying like some of the things that people are wanting to use don't actually make sense from an efficiency standpoint. I'm not sure if that's what he's trying to get at, maybe. I might just need more clarity there to understand. I'm sure it's a great
Yes.
point. I'm probably just tired because like I told you, I was too late at a volleyball tournament, but um oh, lack of
Gotcha.
sleep.
Oh,
But yeah, but I think once you've gotten the recommitting of that department to at least understanding what the standards are, why they exist, why they help them, the team themselves, things like that, you can absolutely, if it's applicable, and that's what Ash and I were just saying, know thy team. If you have a team that loves, we have a dry erase entire wall in the practices, and more or less, like Brittany did that because our teams love little scoreboards of impact.
mhm,
Money is not their thing. I mean, they don't care. They like production goals just fine, but really what they care about is like, how many Invisalign cases did we talk about? How many smiles did we change? Like she loves having her assistants, her whole team of assistants track, did we get the patient scheduled for their next treatment appointment? She's like, that makes my heart just so happy that we can talk through that. And that's my team. Like they like those kind of scoreboards. So know thy team to decide, like I said, money, and we've talked so much about incentivization in the Lady Leaders webinars that, I think money is not always the main motivator. And we have to be careful about using that as such because it can become a demotivator. So I think if you're going to create some sort of win board, scoreboard, it doesn't have to, it can be about changed lives of your patients. It can be about conversations. It can be about implant consultations. Whatever. It can be about impacts on the patients. And if they do hit it, like, gosh, I've done car detailing. I've done pre-made dinners from a chef that was brought to them for their families, or a catered lunch, or like I said, people love mani-pedis. I think you can absolutely celebrate. I mean, mine actually even still love $10 Starbucks cards, but they still just think all of it's kind of fun. So I think when we're setting the goals clearly, correctly, and with a sense of, like I said, regaining the standards and patient impact, most teams get excited about that. Anything else when it comes to like, how do we maintain that level of momentum and scoreboard around it?
I mean, that which is and measured and tracked changes, right? So I do think you do have to have some type of, um, you know,
Yeah,
tracking there. And you know, use Chat GPT all the time. And if you're struggling to come up with creative ways, like I talk to Chat GPT about like, hey, do you have any suggestions here? Or even you're like, my team, is a little more, I apologize, my camera is just having issues today. My team is a little more, less into their feelings about things. How can I make this more analytical for them? Or if it is like, how can I make this more exciting or motivating? Like, I would use Chat GPT as a resource to talk through ideas. And but you do have to find some way to track and measure for sure, and to make it exciting and fun. Like,
right.
it doesn't have to be rah rah and we're cheerleading everything, but you can still have your team be motivated and proud, by giving recognition and shouting them out when things go well and giving that support. I think that that's all very valid, no matter what type of system you're putting into place.
Yep. And mine actually still like, believe it or not, they're department by department, they still use Google spreadsheets. They put the stuff in
Mhm.
and then they post it in their Slack channels and that is how they keep each other accountable. They hold each other accountable and they do it because like I said, it impacts the patients, but it impacts their own department. And when that
Yeah.
happens, they like to be accountable to each other. And with that, I think we do the same thing where we call it out in meetings, not a sense of like celebrations is what I should say.
Yeah.
They already
Yeah.
know when they have the opportunities to improve things and they call each other out in the Slack channels, but of hey, I need your numbers or hey, I need to see this or whatever. But then we get to celebrate when things go really well in front of everybody and call people out specifically. And you're right, like even just that appreciation has been so huge, I think, for everybody. Um, so, what stands in the way then, I think, of changing the momentum, if we kind of wrap this back up, is I think it starts with no sense of real true clarity and or passion conviction from the
Mhm.
doctor and the main leaders, whatever.
Mhm.
um I don't know, like I think for me it always starts with that, is what I should say, is no clarity, no conviction, no clarity or passion or recommitment of the main influencers. I joke, like if I don't have the main influencers, you know with me, like you almost can't pass go. It's hard to move
Mm.
on when the main people are like, yeah, I'm not in on this.
100%.
I'll be honest, like I think it's time to go back inward and say to ourselves, like, do we have the right people on the bus to go to the place we're
Yes.
wanting to go? Um,
Yes.
so for me, it's clarity first. What do I really, really want, coming from a place of abundance, making sure that I'm not maintaining antiquated systems that don't work, that aren't time efficient. AI is amazing. Victoria's with you. She loves it for everything. So, I think there are really smart ways to probably redefine some of our standards that maybe have just gotten antiquated. Clarity and conviction with my main influencers, ensuring that their energy is truly committed to where we're going. Um, I think just allowing people, loud naysayers, to consistently stay on the team. I'm like, I truly do believe you, like, you get to stay and commit, or you can leave in peace. But to just try to allow tons of people to stay in no man's land, momentum can't be created. And so, like, my leaders know we're really specific on that whole omission commission thing, which everybody knows. And I've talked about a ton because of Alistair. You know, that's been pivotal for us. If people are choosing to not commit and complain, but, want to loudly voice their opinions of obstinance constantly, you have to decide, which way do we want to go? How long do you want those people to be able to just stay and not commit? Um,
Mm.
and then I think a lot of times, doctors, it's easy to start strong, come out excited, and then we just start to lose that momentum. That's why I need my leaders, and I need at least two other people to help with that sense of maintaining momentum. So when I do either go out of town or I can't be as available or things start to get hard, there's buy in from a few. Um,
Mm.
and then, I do say, like, I remember 10 years ago when I really just hit this wall of like, I'm redefining everything. Everything I
Mm.
just said, I had to start from the ground up. Ask Amy Maryhugh, ask Debbie Dotson. I had to start from the ground up doing everything that was hard about all of this. Um, you have to know that if you're truly at that place where you know you've got to really change some of the culture stuff, and it does feel like a lot, you've got to choose your hard.
Mm.
It's going to be hard one way or the other. I chose, this is my practice. I pay for it. It's expensive. I take time away from my family and my kids. I remember a second mortgage on my house trying to make things work at one point, and I decided I I want to love being here more than I have those days where I'm just hating it. And I knew that the obstacle was would come. I knew the arrows might get flung a little bit, but I just knew for myself, I'm going to have to choose the hard. I want to choose the hard to create something better and learn from it and never allow it that momentum to go back to the other side. And I'm here to say like it's not fun. And people all know my story of lying on the dog bed and all of that. That's all true. It's very, very true. Um, but I will say that once you commit, once you walk through these steps, they're not easy, but they truly create consistent, lasting change. So yeah, I'm gonna let you kind of speak into that as we wrap things up.
No, that was like so perfect. That was I loved that so much. I think that choosing your hard, and it gets to a point where you're just tired of this hard. It's the same hard and you're not going anywhere, at least with, this hard of develop, trying again and starting from scratch. At least there's some hope that it's going to go in a different direction. You just have to have that conversation with yourself about, where are we, and have I gotten tired of the hard that's not getting me where I want to go? And am I ready to just take on the hard that, at least has some opportunity to get me where I want to go?
Absolutely, for sure. Well, and I don't know if there's any more questions or comments. Please, let us know if there's any other, and you can always reach out to me or Ashley, obviously direct message as well too. So
I think we did kind of answer this question, but yeah, here was just, sometimes I feel I'm so encouraged and understanding, and I think sometimes the team members take advantage of nice and become too comfortable. Then the productivity is compromised. How far is too long, and how
yeah,
do you set the stop? And I think like you said, we back to, at that point, do you really have the right team in place?
yeah.
And do you continue the hard with this team that is fighting you or taking advantage, and you really feel that way? Or do you start over with a team to help you build the culture you want?
Well, and like I said, I totally love Alistair's phraseology of we are hard on the standards, easy on the people. If they're the
Mm,
right people, they're going to be hard on the standards too.
mm,
There's nothing
that's
that comes,
perfect.
they're going to want to recommit to that level of standard. And, I've got personalities that can be tough, but they're tough. Well, but they're tough because they think differently than me, not because
Mm,
they're obstinate, they won't recommit, they take advantage, they feel entitled, or they don't want to commit to that standard. Sometimes they're tough because they think differently. That's okay because they're so committed to the standard. I can handle that. But if it's any of the other things, like you said, how long can you be okay with somebody sitting in the middle ground? Um,
mhm.
if they know the standard and they're consistently repeating the same mistakes over and over, I think there's your answer.
Agreed. Agreed. I have to laugh because like Sydney Robinson and I, man, woo, had some battles in the beginning. Kate Lang and
Oh,
I have
yeah.
had some battles, and now I think we're like a triforce,
Yep.
like
Yep. 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 Yep.
once you realize everyone had the same standard in mind, it was just about how we were going to get there. Now
Yep.
there's, lots of fun things going on.
Yeah. And that's just it. It's like it's fun to work with
Yeah.
people who think differently if we're all going in the same direction. It's when everybody just, they refuse to
Yeah.
think that things can be figure outable and they
Yeah.
just want to plant their flag and never move. Like that's tough. So,
Yeah.
but
Agreed. Agreed.
well, awesome. Well, we look forward to seeing everybody next month. And like I said, if there's any follow-up questions in regards to this, please feel free to just reach out to us in DSN on direct message. So thank you everybody for joining us. Sorry that it's starting to get dark in here. As you know, it gets
I
dark
know
at
I
some
was
point.
laughing. I'm like, it's always the ones at the end of the year. It's like pure darkness.
Yeah. I
when we're
know.
doing these.
I'm like, I kind of feel like I'm in Blair
Uh,
Witch or something here. Sorry, guys.
Too funny, too funny. Well, thank you
Oh,
so much, Summer. Yeah, we'll be back next month for an amazing recap of all of our Lady Leader webinars for the year. It will be our last webinar of 2024. Stay tuned for that date. And yes, anything else, Summer?
that's it. Yeah. And actually, everybody have a wonderful Thanksgiving, which it's hard to believe. Yes.
Love it. Love it.
All right, guys. We'll
Awesome.
see ya. Bye bye.
Bye.